It was a quiet evening in late autumn, and the sun was beginning to set behind the distant hills. Tom sat on the edge of the porch, fiddling with his fishing gear. The day had been long, and the idea of escaping to the lake for some peaceful fishing called to him. His wife, Sarah, stood in the doorway, arms folded. Concern etched on her face. "You shouldn't go, Tom. It's getting late," she said, her voice laced with worry. "You know what they say about the lake after dark." Tom laughed softly, shaking his head. "Sarah, it's just old stories. I'll be back in a few hours with enough fish for tomorrow. I've been fishing at that lake for years. Nothing's going to happen." Sarah's eyes darkened as she stepped closer. "It's not the fishing I'm worried about. People have seen things out there, strange things." He shrugged her off, kissed her cheek, and promised he'd be careful. Grabbing his gear, Tom headed out toward Silver Lake, the old secluded spot where he had fished countless times before. It was a short drive, but as he neared the lake, the air seemed to grow colder, and the sky took on a strange, ominous hue. The sun had all but disappeared, leaving only a faint glow on the horizon. When Tom arrived at the lake, it was eerily still. The water reflected the fading light of the sky like a dark mirror. He set up his equipment by the old, creaky dock, casting his line into the calm water. The sound of the reel spinning was the only noise, aside from the occasional whisper of wind through the nearby trees. He felt a shiver, but blamed it on the temperature. As he sat waiting for a bite, time seemed to stretch endlessly. Minutes felt like hours, and a creeping unease settled in his chest. He checked his phone. No signal, but it didn't matter. He figured he'd give it another hour or so. Suddenly, the line tugged hard, almost yanking the rod from his hands. With a grunt, Tom pulled back, expecting a large fish. But something felt off. The resistance on the line wasn't jerky, like a fish fighting against the hook. It was steady, as if something far heavier was dragging the line deeper into the lake. His heart raced as he struggled to reel it in, but no matter how hard he tried, the weight on the other end didn't budge. And then, as quickly as it had come, the tension vanished. The line went slack. Breathing heavily, Tom checked the hook. The bait was gone, but that wasn't what made his stomach drop. Hanging from the end of the line was an old, decaying locket, covered in slime and algae. He frowned, wiping it clean with the edge of his shirt. Inside, there was a faded photograph of a young woman, her eyes hollow, her face worn with time. The sight sent a chill down his spine, and he tossed the locket aside. Something about it felt wrong. The wind picked up, and Tom noticed the fog rolling in over the lake, thicker and denser than usual. It clung to the surface of the water, swirling like ghostly tendrils. Then he heard it, a soft splash. His breath caught in his throat as he scanned the lake, but nothing was there, just ripples disturbing the glassy surface. But as the fog continued to thicken, something moved out of the corner of his eye, a shadow gliding just beneath the water, slowly rising to the surface. Tom froze, unable to believe what he was seeing. A woman, pale and soaked, emerged from the depths. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth twisted in a silent scream. The same woman from the photograph in the locket. She was dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned dress, torn and ragged. Her skin was blue with decay, and her long hair floated unnaturally around her. Panic surged through Tom as he stumbled back, tripping over his gear and falling onto the dock. The woman's hollow eyes locked onto his, and she started moving toward him, walking across the water as if it were solid ground. "No, this can't be real," Tom muttered, scrambling to his feet, but the dock was slippery. His foot slid, and he fell hard, closer to the edge. The ghostly figure reached the dock, her footsteps now audible. The creak of the wood beneath her seemed to echo in the dead silence around them. Her hand reached out, pale fingers extending toward him. Tom's mind raced, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his body felt frozen, paralyzed by fear. He finally mustered the strength to get up and sprint toward his car, his breath coming in ragged gasps. As he fumbled with his keys, the air around him seemed to grow heavier, colder. He looked back only to see the woman standing at the edge of the dock, her mouth opening in a chilling, silent wail. With trembling hands, Tom started the car and sped away from the lake, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't stop until he reached the safety of his home, slamming the door behind him. His wife, Sarah, rushed over. "Tom, what happened? You're pale as a ghost." For a long moment, he couldn't find the words. His mind was racing, replaying the terrifying events. "It was her," he finally whispered. "The woman from the lake. She's real." Sarah's face went pale. "The stories. I told you not to go." For days after the incident, Tom couldn't shake the haunting memory of the ghost of the lake. He never returned to Silver Lake, and word quickly spread in the small town about what he had seen. Some believed him, others laughed, chalking it up to an overactive imagination. But Tom knew what he had witnessed that night, and the memory of that ghostly woman would haunt him forever.